Okay, everybody, if you could join me in the blessing over the reading of the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bakar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who chose us from all the peoples and gave to us his Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord, the giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. And I'm going to read beginning in chapter 28 of Genesis. And I'm going to complete chapter 28. Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and laid down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father, Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called that place Bethel, though the city used to be called
Pastor
Luz.
Vince right now.
Then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's house, and the Lord will be my God. And this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth.
Amen.
Let's say the blessing after the reading from the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah timet v'chayei olam nato b'tekenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth and planted everlasting life within us. Blessed are you, O Lord, the giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. Okay, everyone. It's nice to be back in the saddle as far as Torah study goes. We missed a week because of Thanksgiving.
Honey?
Yeah.
Oh, you're not coming in to watch to do it though. Okay, fine.
Peggy and I
There
did,
you are,
we were with
there.
our
I'll be
family.
here on Tuesday.
But like I said, it's nice to be back. The parashah that we missed last week is Todot. Okay, so
It's a good
what I'd
teaching.
like to do first is just go
That's
back.
there. Can you hear her
just
voice?
in a nutshell, describe what we missed.
Okay.
So in Todot, Isaac and Rebekah endured 20
I see you.
childless years
Oh yeah, there. That's
until
good.
their prayers are answered and Rebekah conceives. She experiences
No.
a difficult pregnancy as the children struggle inside her, and God tells her that there are two nations in your womb, and that the younger will prevail over the elder. Esau emerges first. Jacob is born clutching Esau's heel. Esau grows up to be a hunter, a man of the field. Jacob, what they call him, is a wholesome man, a dweller in the tents of learning. As Maria and I were talking earlier, he was taught under Shem, Noah's son. If you say, where did you read that? The rabbis have this written. It's in the Midrash, in the Humash. So and in the book of Jubilee, Maria wants us to point out. So Isaac favors Esau. Rebekah loves Jacob. Returning exhausted and hungry from a hunt one day, Esau sells his birthright. The right as the firstborn to Jacob for a pot of red lentil stew. Okay, in Gerar, in the land of the Philistines, Isaac presents Rebekah as his sister out of fear that he will be killed by someone coveting her beauty. Boy, didn't that happen sometime even before that with Abraham? Yes, it did. He farms the land, reopens the wells dug by his father Abraham. One thing about that, when they talk about the wells earlier on in another parashah, he would dig wells, but then later on the Philistines covered them up. And you know what digging wells was represented? It represented the ownership of that land. So with the Philistines coming back later on and filling them up, they're trying to erase it. And it's something that's still going on today, that they want to erase the Israelites ever owning any of the land that they're in. So in that parashah there, he farms the land, reopens the wells dug by his father Abraham, and digs a series of his own wells. Over the first two, there is strife with the Philistines, but the waters of the third well are enjoyed, and then now they can live happily ever after. Esau marries two Hittite women. Isaac grows old and blind and expresses his desire to bless Esau before he dies. While Esau goes off to hunt for his father's favorite food, Rebekah dresses Jacob in Esau's clothes, covers his arms and neck with goat skin to simulate the feel of a hairier brother, prepares a dish that Jacob's father and sends Jacob to his father to give it to him. Jacob receives his father's blessings for the dew of the heaven and the fat of the land, and that he would rule over his brother. When Esau returns and the deception is revealed, all Isaac can do is for his weeping son is to predict that he will live by the sword. And when Jacob, because of the forfeit of the inheritance, Jacob leaves home for Haran to flee Esau's wrath and to find a wife Okay, and you know what? We discussed this earlier, Maria and I, and he said he went to find a wife. And in this little summary of the previous parashah, that's exactly what I wrote, Maria. A wife. In the family of his brother Laban, Esau marries a third wife. And then when the Torah portion ends, Toldot, Esau marries a third wife, and it's one of the daughters of Ishmael. So that was Toldot. That was the previous one that we missed. And now we're going to get into the parashah for this week, and that is Vayetzei. Okay, Vayetzei, it could be spelled different ways. And Vayetzei, Vayetzei. So there's different ways of spelling it. But Vayetzei is the name of this parashah, and it means, and he went out. And this week's parashah begins with Jacob leaving his mother and father and going out. And as we said, he goes out because he is forced to go out. Today's parashah begins with Jacob on the run. Okay, so in Roman numeral number 1, Vayetzei equals, and he went out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to discuss what it says there in letter A, the journey of Jacob. So that's where we're going to be, in the journey of Jacob. Okay. All right. So Jacob is on the run, on his way to his uncle Laban's home. You know what I need, Peggy? Yeah. Yeah. She'll get it for me. Okay.
I got it. I carry it
Thank
with
you.
me. You never know.
You know, and we said that Jacob is on the run. You know, in the previous parashah, you find out why, but does anybody know why he is on the run? Esau wants to kill him. Esau does not like his brother. His brother, as far as he was concerned, his brother stole his blessing from him. Okay, so that's why he is going away. On his way to his uncle Laban's home. Laban is Rebekah's brother, and she's sending him to Haran because she wants him to marry from their own household, their own people. Yeah, she doesn't want him to marry anyone in the land of Canaan. Okay, now he departed Beersheba and is going to Haran. Beersheba is a biblical town in southern Israel. It is a city and a main center of that region. That's like, you know, there's roads going through because it's a main thoroughfare. The Negev, and it's in the Negev region. The Negev is a desert area in southern Israel. Haran is in Turkey. And if you can visualize, maybe you can't visualize the Middle East. When you do a geographical study of the Middle East, then you'll say, whoa, this is way up here, this is down here. And it would be kind of like leaving Los Angeles and going up to, let's say, San Francisco. Okay, it's that you could probably visualize, you know, but the Negev is a desert area, like I said, in southern Israel. So now he's going up into northern Syria. But by today's location of the two cities, this would be a distance of approximately anywhere between 457 miles of traveling to 600 miles. Okay, it is a long distance that he would be on foot. And I remember I did this, maybe I'll cover it later on, about you know, how many miles you can walk in a day, you know. And you know, but boy, if he can only walk, let's say if he could walk 25 miles in a day, that's going to take him a long time in order to get there.
There's camels in there.
Yeah. Well, they did have camels, but when he left, it says that he left with just what he was carrying.
Oh.
It doesn't say that he was given camels and all this, you know, so we could read into it like that because they were a very wealthy family, but it doesn't say that in the word. Okay. And it does say it in the book of Jubilee.
These servants after him, and to save his life.
Oh, you know what? Use the mic so everybody can listen.
No, but this is a rabbit trail. They don't want to hear it.
Yes, they do.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It was either the book of Jasper or Jubilee. I didn't mark that down, but he left with camels or donkeys and money and clothes and all that. But Esau sent his servants after him, and to save his life, he said, "Here, take whatever I have, but let me live." And they did. They took him. They took everything. They just almost stripped him down.
Right.
So that's when he arrived with nothing.
Right. Yeah. Well, you see, and there's different thoughts, and that's one thing I'd like to share with all of you, even those that are zooming in. Do a study on this. You know, it's wonderful. I know that I go to the Midrash quite a bit, as well as the Humash, and the Humash has some very good commentary in there. So it's you know, you're not going to read this in the Bible that you have right in front of you, you know, but there are other books. But like we discussed at one Torah study a while back. In fact, I handed out a handout, and it had, I don't even know if I still have it. I probably have it on my computer somewhere, but it gave you a list of all the books that have been destroyed. They're mentioned in the Bible, but yet we don't have a copy of them. So boy, it would be wonderful if they were available to us, because it would give us more, it would be more insight. Well, you know, I think what it is, you know, our library at home would just have a lot more books in it. Go ahead, Bernadette. Oh, just all the way up, you don't need a light.
Okay, speaking of books, could maybe the pastor or somebody give me a list of all the books that like I should know of? That way I can-
Well, you know what?
At least,
I don't want you to get on a journey that is not good. In other words, when I share these books, it's something to read, but you know, it's just like I was told years ago from a person that called in and was criticizing our congregation, and he told me that I should read the Quran. And yeah, that's what he said. He said, you should read the Quran. And I said, no, I am not going to read the Quran. And the reason is, I told the guy, I said, you must be about 35 years old. He said, well, I'm 32. I said, okay, then you read the Quran. I said, I'm more in the, you know, October of my life or November of my life. I said, in other words, I said, I'm much older. I said, I still have a lot to learn in the Bible. I said, so I want to press into the Bible, and that's where I want to spend the rest of my life. I said, you younger kids, if you want to read something to debate the Bible, how true it is, I said, I encourage you to do that. I said, but I'm not going to read the Quran to study. Yeah, you're right. You know, I'm not going to do that. So so I don't do that. So that's one thing I would just suggest. It's nice to have, like when I gave out that list a while back, it had all these, the Book of Wars. We don't know what the Book of Wars, but we do know that if we had it, we would know why when Moses, before he entered the promised land, and they had these wars with some of the neighboring hillside people, we'd probably have more insight on it, more information. The Book of Jubilee, the Book of all these different, and there's some, these books, you know, and I'll tell you something, Yeshua mentions, there's books that he has mentioned, and we have no idea. Maria, go ahead, but use your microphone, please.
Well, I sort of disagree with you. To go to other books, you really first have to be anchored in this book.
That's correct.
Because now, thanks to Pastor Bruce and for you teachers, I read this or I listen to a sermon and the pastor will say something and I say, wait a second, that doesn't sound right.
Right.
And then if I was to leave it there, I'm in error.
Mhm.
But then I would say, wait a second, I want to find out which one is the truth.
Right, right.
Then I go to the scriptures, then I go, and then I'm anchored more in the Bible.
And you know what, Maria, for you, yes. And for all the other students in here, yes, go ahead and do it like that. But if I'm speaking to like for instance, we shared earlier about my granddaughter that she just, you know, if she was in here right now, she would be dumbfounded.
That's
you
why I
know,
say you have to be
you gotta,
anchored in
you gotta
Christ
be,
first.
yeah. And that's what, I guess, what I, in a roundabout way, get anchored into the Bible, you know. And then if you read something in there, if you come across one of the scriptures that mentions a book, check it out. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're, like I said, it's like about roughly a distance of 457 miles that Jacob would be traveling. And then was he on foot? Or was he on camel? Was it horseback? Genesis 32:10 tells us that he left Beersheba for Haran with only his staff in his hand, and he crossed the Jordan River. Okay, that's what it's telling us. This is telling us that Jacob did not travel the road that his grandfather Abraham would use when Abraham left Haran for Canaan, and we know why. I mean, if he would have went down the road that everybody knew, and Esau had taken or had sent his servants out, well, they're going to catch up to him, you know, in no time, you know. The Bible verse is Genesis 32:10. Yeah. Okay. Now, if Jacob went east before he would go north, that would add another 125 miles to his journey, to his distance. And that's why I said, you know, you got the 457, well, you add on another 125. Now, who knows, was it 457 or did he have to travel 600 miles? You know, and that's only one way to get to his uncle Laban. Okay. Ever thought how long it would take him if he was walking, or why is Jacob walking? Jacob's father Isaac or Itzhak is very wealthy, so a camel or a horse would be something that the family would have had plenty of. Instead, according to this verse in Genesis 32, all he had was his staff. Now, the clothes that was on him, you know, wouldn't it have gotten dirty or old or raggedy or whatever, going all that way? Well, you know what? If the shoes on the people's feet in the Exodus never wore out, you know, Lord God can do anything. So you see somebody's. Okay, an active person. An active, healthy person can walk about 26 miles a day. So let's say Jacob walked 20 miles a day. That would mean it would have taken him 30 days to get from Beersheba to Haran. And that would be without resting on the Sabbath. Okay, so, you know, that's just giving you an idea. It was a long way. All right, now, in Roman numeral 1 and A1, 600 miles, a one-way trip. And okay, in Genesis 28:11, we'll go back a little bit. In Genesis 28:11, we read, and this is from the Complete Jewish Bible. Yaakov went out from Beersheba and traveled towards Haran. He came to a certain place and stayed the night there because the sun had set. He took a stone from the place, put it under his head, and laid down there to sleep. It was dangerous to travel at night. There was a time many years ago that the land of Canaan was filled with wild animals. You won't read this now, but you read this in some of the other books, that in some of the commentaries, that there was a time Israel had lions. Well, look at Samson. Yeah, we read the story of Samson. So there were lions, bears. I don't know about bears, but I know there was tigers, lions. You know, but there were wild animals. Even today, do you know that there's still wild boar in Israel? You know, so there are some wild animals. And if you get too close to the goats, when you go to, where am I thinking about? Before Masada. I remember getting out and there's goats traveling everywhere, but if you get too close to them, they're gonna let you know it, and give you a little buck there. But most Bibles call where Jacob stopped to rest the place. Rashi in the Humash identifies it as Mount Moriah, the place. This is where Abraham nearly sacrificed Isaac. In Genesis 22:4, we read, so Abraham got up early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac, and he split wood for the burnt offering and set out and went to the place of which God had told him. So according to Rashi and other Jewish commentaries, the place, anytime, in fact, there's sometimes people mention things like that and they just say something like that, the place. Well, you know what, if you said that in a synagogue, they're going to know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, that Genesis 22 and Genesis 28:11 is talking about Mount Moriah. The Hebrew word for the place is ha-makom, H-A-M-A-K-O-M. M-A-K-O-M. So in letter B, the place equals Mount Moriah. And the Hebrew, like I said, this is also the future location of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. Earlier I read and it said that this place is the house of God. So there's no wonder why this would be the temple. This would be Mount Moriah, where the temple is made or was built. But it says we run into, the commentaries tell us that we run into a problem here. Geographically, the town of Bethel is about 10 miles north of Jerusalem. Even Rashi concedes that Jacob was in Bethel and not Jerusalem, but gives an explanation for this. And only God can do this, everyone. While Jacob slept, Mount Moriah moved to him, or he moved to Mount Moriah, okay? Whether that is literally true that Jacob chose to spend that night on the Temple Mount or not, there's no way to know, but it is correct according to Jewish tradition. What we do know is Jacob put a stone under his head and he laid down. So when people start saying, aha, I found an error, Bethel is 10 miles north, and he could not have been there. Well, then, aha, the rabbis have an answer for that. The mountain moved. Well, it's kind of, like Bernadette, it's kind of like, when they say the ark came and rested on Mount Ararat. Well, then when you study it out, it's not on Mount Ararat, it's on the mountain range. So it stopped way over here, but yet this peak over here, they call Mount Ararat. It's not there, So there's a lot here. And that's why, getting back to the extra books that we read, you're going to find out some extra information. And I think, I don't know if I did good or if I did bad with Tila when I told her when she went out and bought the Midrash. Because now, because sometimes she'll tell me, she said, oh, Pastor Vince, I read this and oh my gosh, where did they get that from? I said, yeah, exactly, but it's good reading. Okay, in Genesis 28:12, the New American Standard says, and he had a dream, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth with its top reaching to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. The Message Bible says, and he dreamed a stairway was set on the ground and it reached all the way to the skies. Angels of God were going up and going down. You will find the Bible translations will either say stairway or ladder, because that's one of the things that always comes out. Is it a stairway or was it a ladder? You know, and both of them are in there, you know. So, but did you notice that which way were the angels going first? Up. They were ascending. Both times when it's mentioned, the angels are ascending and then descending, you know. So they go up to get all this information from the Lord, and then they bring it back down. And that's just a wonderful picture of even today, you know, our prayers, our prayers are lifted up and they're going up. You know, even today, they say that when your prayer is prayed, that it makes a beeline to where the Holy Temple stood and goes straight up from there to heaven. I thought, boy, that's a beautiful picture, you know. Go ahead, Maria. Let me have it, Maria.
Do you think that back then they had more miracles and more manifestations because angels came down and took the forms of men, and they were different animals, different species, different angels changing God's will, that there was more miracles like the mountain moving? And as time went on, the manifestations and the workings of God just decreased.
Yeah, no,
That
Maria.
now that we read things like this, we say, oh,
Yeah,
that's just something in the rabbi's mind. But what if it wasn't?
you know that, but I think there are more miracles today than there were back then. And the reason I say that is because everything was centered in a certain area during that time. And he scattered his people to the four corners of the earth. So his people are anywhere and everywhere. And they're praying to him and he's answering prayers. So there's more people today than back then. No, well, you know what? I know what you're saying, you know, because people do look for signs and wonders and this, you know, I think it's those little miracles today that really, it tests our faith and it keeps us.
But as a group, who would have thought that a group of people in 1967 would be crossing the gates and claiming this land is ours?
Yeah,
From what? From a group of immigrants?
yeah.
That has never happened, but the
Right.
Bible said that is a biggie.
Oh, that is a big,
It's a biggie.
yeah, that is a
I
biggie.
know God can cure cancer.
Yeah, well, yeah,
God can, but that is something to make you stronger.
yeah,
But as a group, that when we pick up a paper, we say, what, look at what God did, not just for one person, but for millions.
right.
It makes us as a unit stronger. So I go with moving the mountain.
Moving the mountain, okay. I don't have a problem with that. And I don't think anybody else in here does. But no, you know, it's wonderful. But when you ask me the question about these miracles, oh, I believe that, in fact, I'm just happy that there's more miracles going on today because there's more people today. And, you know,
That's a funny feeling.
well, but it's okay. No, it's okay. But when I hear that this little boy was on his deathbed and now he is just talking with joy and having fun and everything, that is a beautiful miracle.
Yes, and the thing of it is though, is that our individual walk, our individual faith is grown on is grown on the principle of what God's relationship with ourselves, not with everybody else. I mean,
Right.
it's wonderful to see those things, but our walk is a one-on-one walk,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
so-
Yeah. Well, we're all in it together. Okay, everyone, let's get back. Let's look at the symbolism of Jacob's dream. And first, let's go with the Humash. The Humash says that it symbolizes the ladder alludes to Mount Sinai. The angels represent Moses and Aaron, and God stands at the top of the ladder just as he did at Mount Sinai, giving his Torah. Another interpretation is that Jacob represents Israel and the angels represent the future nations that have risen and fallen through history. And you can read this in the commentaries. It says the people of Israel suffered under the Assyrians, okay, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. Each empire rose and each empire fell. And it tells you at a different rung of the ladder is where these empires stood, and then they fell. Standing at the top is God. In both instances, or in all instances, our Lord is always on top. He calls the shots. Okay, Genesis 28:15 says, you want to write that down, Genesis 28:15. Okay, it says, behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Okay, God has never abandoned his people. He still stands tall, over us, over all of them. And yet another explanation says that Jacob was shown that there was a host of angels that were ready to protect him. They were guardians sent to watch over his coming and his going. There were angels with them in Canaan, and another group that would be with Jacob outside the land. So what it's telling us here in the Midrash and in the Humash is that there were angels with them while he was there in the land, but once he hit that barrier, then another group of angels took over. That's hard, and you could go either way with that, because what I look at is way before that, the Lord told Abraham, wherever he sets the soles of his feet, that is the land that the Lord is going to give him. Well, if he went all the way up, what river is that? That I'm thinking of, and settled up in Haran. If the Chaldean, if he took all that trek, went all the way down now to the great sea, which is the Mediterranean, came all the way down. All that is his. So to read this and say that he went up to the River Jordan, and then right when they crossed another group of angels because he was in a different land, I don't know. I'm thinking it's the same land. It's the land that God promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and all their descendants. So that's what the Midrash is saying, is that a new group of angels took over when he went outside the land. So the angels were going up to God to receive instructions and then going down to deliver the instructions. In Genesis 32:2, we will read how the angels of Eretz Israel, land of Israel, returned to Jacob as Jacob entered the Holy Land once again. Let me turn there, 32:2. Genesis 32:2. Okay, and it says, well, I'll start in 1. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named that place Mahami. So it says, it alludes to the fact that the angels came to meet him. Okay. Um, Okay, it's as though the angels assigned to him when he was outside the land were now relieved of their duty, so they would have to ascend back to God to be given a new job. And I don't know where I read it, but that's what I've read, that even us, we have angels that look over us, that are, and we call them what, our guardian angel. That, and some of us might have multiple guardian angels. But what do you think happens if you should pass away? Does this angel just disappear? Well, no, the angel would go back to the Lord to get, now what's my next duty? I mean, I think about my sister Carol, who passed away. She's been gone now for a few years, and God bless. Yeah, God bless the person who received that angel. Because, it's, okay, go ahead. Were you gonna say something, Tila?
Yeah,
Okay.
that camp, says that God's camp, and he called the name Ahim, and that means two camps or double camp.
Uh-huh.
What is, so expound upon that?
What, the double camp?
Yeah, the double camp.
I didn't even read on that, Tila. But that's right at the end of our Torah portion. Yeah. Yeah. So no,
Yeah,
two camps, yeah.
double camp.
it says two camps. You're right. That's something, we're gonna do. Yeah, he split them, but then he split them in more than two. And that's something we're gonna get at in the next Torah portion. He splits his family in different groups, and we read where he said, if the Lord will take care of me and watch over me and bring me back, and I will give all this, he's asking the Lord to do. But then why did you split your family up in all these various groups? Because what he perceives, the enemy is coming after him. I think so. I think so. I think so. And that's why sometimes I think we had a conversation earlier that there's some people in this, that we read about, we don't really think so highly of because of, like you said, bargaining with God. Come on, but, maybe they don't think so highly of us. I don't know. Go ahead, Pastor Kathleen.
Well, I was just gonna share that Rashi shares, he explains that Jacob uses that word to signify two different kinds of camps, one outside the land of Israel, one within. Others believe it references a pair of connected camps, perhaps one camp on earth and one in heaven.
Oh,
Just a
yeah.
thought.
That is a thought, especially when you're talking about Jacob's ladder, Yeah, you're right. And then like we just read where he said, then they came to meet him. So, there were different angels watching over him, and that's where I think that some of us need more than one angel watching over us. That's why I raised my hand.
I remember when Bruce and both of my boys used to go scuba diving, and then I would sit on the shore relaxing, and I'd say, gosh, Lord, my angel gets to just sit and relax, and their angels, they have to work really hard.
They got all the gear on going underneath with them, and oh my gosh. Okay. Now, if you want to write this down, Hebrews 1:14. In Hebrews 1:14, it says, are they not all ministering spirits sent out to provide service for the sake of those who will inherit salvation? Okay, so we all have guardian angels. Okay, I don't know, and that's why I put the S there, guardian angels. because I am one of them that I need more than one to watch over me. I don't know if I have one or more angels protecting me, but I do know our Father in heaven will watch over his children. Okay, thank you, Lord. He's much wiser than I would ever be. And maybe that's why he never says, hey, Pastor Vince, can you give me a hand at this? You know, it's Peggy Sue. Thank you. Has anybody made any comments yet?
The only one who did, I didn't know if you wanted me to.
Use a microphone.
It goes back to the miracles you were talking about.
Oh, okay.
And Susan Gibbons said, amen, she believes in miracles. She had no ink left in her laptop last week, it had run out. And she asked God to give her ink in this laptop. And so she could print out the notes for this morning, and he did.
And he did.
He had
The little things, you know, but amen. And I think about what is the one where how much, he knows every sparrow or bird and what that falls and, how much more is he going to protect his people, and okay, go ahead, hon.
in reference to like what she was saying, what you say,
Gila?
Rambam said, or?
Oh, Kathleen.
Yeah, Rashi about the two camps. I had read that the two camps, when he says this is God's camp, and now he changes the name to Mahanaim.
Yeah.
Because I am obviously is plural, and so what they were saying it meant was that his camp is now joined to God's camp, so you have two.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's good to
Oh,
know.
yeah, that's good. I like that one too, I like that one better. No, but it's funny, like Peggy was saying, when you add an IM to the end of the word, it makes it plural. It just reminds me of the time when I was at work and there was this burgering. There was a hamburger place that they opened up, and it's in Israel, and they opened it up out here in the States, and it was called Burgerine. And people used to say, man, what a weird name. Well, what would this name, And so I explained to them, I said, they add an IM to it. They said, well, and? I said, because that makes it plural. In Hebrew, when you add an IM, that makes it, they're telling you they have all kinds of burgers. They have burgers with pineapple, burgers with this. I said, like this. And all of them looked at me with that stare like, oh, but then they said, only you would know that. That's what one person told me. Only you. I said, no, there's more people out there that know that. But, I don't know if they even still exist, because I know when COVID came, boy, a lot of things closed up and they closed up. So
You can't do just one.
you can't. But it was more of a gourmet burger. It wasn't, you didn't. Yeah, just for the burger. And if you wanted fries, well then, they're still open? Okay, burgering. Riverside Rancho Cucamonga. So if anybody ever wants a gourmet burger and they want to get it from this is probably the closest to a Jewish deli, but and I say that because I haven't been there. I went there before when they had it here in San Bernardino, but they don't have it there. With it Redlands? That's one thing I was gonna say. There is. And then knowing them, I was gonna say this is the closest to a Jewish deli you can go to. But I thought, you know what? I better not even say that, because if they have cheeseburgers or if they put bacon on it, exactly. That's why I was surprised years ago when we went to Israel. We had a tour guide, and he said, he made a comment. This is a Jew that lives in well, he was originally from Brooklyn, but he lived in Israel. And he said, oh, every now and then I just got to sneak away and go have my ham and rye.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they have a kosher hot dog with bacon. And they look, and when I looked up there, I said, kosher hot dog with bacon. I said, you can't do that. And they looked at me like I was off my rocker. And I said, well, oh, never mind.
Probably not even all beef hot dogs then.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, yeah. And I think that if I remember right, that was at Five Guys.
Yeah.
Five Guys. Yeah, they have a kosher hot dog with bacon. Okay. Okay, when looking, now we're gonna look at this just at the basic form. The basic form is what? The Pardis? The Pardis? The most simple level, oh no, we're looking at this from the Pardis. The most simple level is the Peshat. Heaven is God and the world below is Jacob. The ladder that connects heaven and earth, the ladder can be understood to remind us that we have a connection with our Father in heaven through prayer, okay? Obedience, faith, and Messiah. God's commandments are like a ladder. It allows us to be closer to our Lord. And then how about Yeshua, our Messiah? Well, in John, you could put this down, John 20, verse 17, John 20, 17. It says, I am ascending to my Father and your Father and my God and your God. You see how even in the Brit Hadashah, they bring this together. Then in John 6, 38, we read, for I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. Okay, our Lord is the stairway or ladder to the Father. It's through Messiah, Yeshua, that we can ascend to the Father. And didn't he say that in his word? That only by me, only by his son Yeshua, we can have fellowship with the Father. And that's very hard. That's very hard, especially, there's thinking out there and you take it as you will, but, that there's two ways to the Father. The Jews have their own way and the rest of the world has their way or the believers, Well, Yeshua wouldn't have said that if he didn't mean it. When he says it, he means it, that there's only one way to the Father. And that's through that's through him, the Messiah. Okay, in verses 13 to 15, the same God you know what I didn't do, you guys? I think I stopped giving you fill-ins. Okay, in letter B, verse 1, or number 1, this was Jacob's first vision of God. In number 2, a ladder or stairway reaching heaven, angels ascending and descending the stairway / ladder, God standing at the top. So in 1, the fill-in is vision. In 2, ladder, ascending, and God. And then in number 3, God sends angels to provide service to those who love him.
What was the last one on
To God. Should I spell it? No, I'm just kidding. That reminds me of this athlete who was very vocal and he was a pain in the behind. And one of the guys said to him, you can't even spell dog and I'll spot you the D and the G. That was good. So, but getting back into our Torah portion. Okay, so you got that one. I might as well give you number 4. Jacob wakes up and is afraid. You know, talking about stiff neck, yesterday when I left service, oh, my neck was bothering me. And we had to, there's things we had to do. When you got kids, you know, when you got kids and grandkids, can we do that? Can you meet us here? And oh my God, we just want to go home and rest. Well, I have the bad neck, and so we go into the mall and I sit there. There's a place there that they do massages, massage. So I went over, oh, I did that. I went over there and I got out and, oh, it felt good. It didn't, it from, let's say, my neck was hurting and it was at from 1 to 10, it was like at about an 8. Well, after the massage, it went down to about a 3. So it was, at least I was able to tolerate it, you know. And even now I could still feel it, but it's not that bad. So I recommend if your shoulders or neck or whatever, get a massage. So in verses 13 to 15, the same God who appeared to Abraham and Isaac is now telling Jacob the same thing he said to his father and his grandfather, that he is the Lord, that all the land below him is his and given to his descendants. Okay, God then promises Jacob that he will protect him wherever he goes. I will protect you wherever you go. And you'll see in the next parashah that, you know, somehow Jacob is no different than us. We pray to the Lord for a healing, and we ask for the healing, but then the next day we pray again to him for a healing. You say, oh, somebody says, hey, the Lord has healed you, or protection, whatever, you fill in the blank. But we pray, and then we come back again and pray again, and we come back and pray again, and we come back and ask and pray again. You know, this is a constant. Well, Jacob here is going to do the same thing. He asked that you protect him, and did the Lord protect him? Absolutely. You know, but then in the next parashah, you're going to see he's going to do things his own way because he doesn't believe the Lord is protecting him. But you realize Jacob is only about 100 miles into his journey. He still has a long way to go. And Jacob needs all the protection he can get. This is also the first time Jacob meets the father in person, or you could say one-on-one, okay? With no family or friend, God will be there to meet his needs. God promises to keep Jacob safe. God promised to bring him back to the land. And God promised that he will never leave him alone. He will not desert him. This is exactly what Jacob needed to hear. Now he will continue on his walk, you know, and it seems like that's what he needed. There's always an encouraging word out there that we need to hear. This is what Jacob needed. Jacob needed. At this time, how old would Jacob be? I don't know. Did you check it out, Maria? Use the microphone. Is this like the old, was it Johnny Carson or one of them when they would say something? How old was he?
He was in his 70s.
70s? Maria says that he was in his 70s, and I didn't, unless.
He was 77 when he met.
77.
77 when he met Rachel.
Rachel? Oh my gosh. You know what? And when you think about that love story, if that's what you want to call it, you would think that he was probably so much younger. Yeah.
She was 15, he was 77. Real love story.
Okay. We won't go there, Maria, for sake of time. Okay. Also think about what is being said here when God tells him that he will bring him back to the land. Was God also speaking about a future time when Jacob died in Egypt. You know, that's something to think about. I will bring you back to the land, because you remember when Jacob finally is able to see Joseph again, he goes down to Egypt, and you know, so, and then he dies there, and they bring him back to the land. Remember, it was his sons who took his body back to the promised land to be buried in the cave of Machpelah. Okay, now in verses 17 and 18, why would Jacob be afraid? I mean, we can only guess. You think maybe it was because Jacob had wronged his brother and father? Okay, it's just a thought, okay? God knows everything. Adam was in fear of God when he ate the forbidden fruit. Peter confessed that he was a sinner when he realized Yeshua was no ordinary man. So Jacob may have been afraid being in the presence of the Almighty, having sinned not too long earlier. Okay, his deceitfulness to his brother and his father. Go ahead, Tila.
Well, I took it a little bit differently. I took it a little differently because mine says, and he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. I challenge that word afraid, because haven't you ever been, I've had this experience, okay? When I did it in my prayer room, I walked in and I go, oh, this is really something. It was more than what I could imagine in the spirit. You know what I'm saying? It was just a normal room, but it wasn't a normal room. And with this, I just challenged that word afraid. I should have looked it up and I didn't, you know, to what the Hebrew word for that, or in that, you know, it was not like I'm scared. We're to fear the Lord. So
Yeah.
there's a fear, there's a healthy fear, but he says, how awesome is this place? I mean, totally, and he knows that this is the house of God. This is the place.
This is it, yeah.
And so
And you know, and you're right, this is the house of God. So that's why when we talked about earlier, hey, I can go with the mountain coming to him, or he was going on to the mountain of Moriah, because when he talks about the house of God, the house of the Lord was built on Mount Moriah. When they sacrificed, when they had their sacrifices, you know that pleasing aroma, the smoke that went up, it didn't just all like this go up. It was straight up. Go ahead, Maria, use the microphone.
Now I'm gonna challenge Tila. Because here he is, he starts out in fear. He's afraid of his brother. His brother is not just a hunter. He killed Nimrod, which is a super giant, an emperor of almost the whole world at that time. And his brother killed him. Now his brother is after him. He's in fear. He lays down and he wakes up and he says, God is around him. I said, oh, what else did I do? He's afraid. If I was to go to bed in fear and wake up and see God, my first thought is not, oh, how fuzzy this is. This is so awesome. I would be, oh my God, what did I do? Did I forget something?
My dad.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think when they wrote that, they must have taken the word that means something else and put in awesome to make that it was something supernatural, something so above of what we think, of what we feel. It was, how do you explain awesome, an awesome God?
Right.
You can't, you know?
Right. No, you're right, Maria. And you know, that's one thing that maybe not good with the English language. We get these Hebrew words and we do the best we can with them. And it's, you know, sometimes, you know, this is the best that we can do, but yet it's not an accurate description of it. Yeah. Yeah.
We just say love.
Yeah.
What kind of love?
What kind, yeah, and that has, it could be fuzzy, but then it doesn't have to be, I mean, it's, so you're right, when we read this, it's even the next parashah that we get into by Ishlach, these are the generations. They say that's a very bad, description of that word, because and I'll get into it next week if I do it, but it's
Good thing Peggy's not here.
I know it.
Last time you said that, she said, oh, no, you're not.
She's, because I told her, I said, well, I don't know, maybe Pastor Bruce will want to take next one. If he does it, then I'll grab it. But she goes, no, you're not. And I said, but yeah. Okay, so well, let's move on then. Yeah, but I just, I don't want to see anyone sick in our congregation. And when we get like 25-30% of our congregation sick, that's just terrible. And I know people say, well, it's that time, people get sick at this time, and they're absolutely right. During the winter months, more people, it's always because it's so cold, so
They don't do enough Torah study.
maybe that's it.
We don't have it left.
But I'm like Marie, I still remember the days when we had a Torah study, and oh my gosh, we went till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock, and nobody left. Full house, nobody left. Kathleen and I, we remember when we did the Torah study, and the podium was right there, and everybody facing this way. We could hardly fit in. Yeah.
Switch the whole thing over.
I still remember, and it's still as today, that's why I encourage even people zooming in to put comments in there, or raise your hand if you want to make a comment, but a lot of the nuggets that come isn't from up here. The nuggets are from out there. You guys have some really good things to add in there. And so let's move on. The next morning, to honor the Lord, Jacob took the stone that he laid on and put oil on it. He set up a memorial, stiff-necked and all. Jacob named the place Bethel, house of God. This makes it clear that it was God who appeared to him. Okay, 100 years earlier, Abraham camped there and built an altar to the Lord. At the end of this chapter, I have a problem with Jacob trying to make a deal with God. And we discussed this before about Jacob trying to make a deal. But you know what? It's the same thing going on today. People are still trying to make deals with the Lord. And if that is what he's doing, Jacob says, if. How many times? 3 times. If God remains with me and keeps me safe on the journey I am making, and then he goes on. Okay. That number 2. If God gives me food to eat and clothes to wear. And then the 3rd time, if I come home safe to my father's house, and it goes on. Jacob then says that he will give God 1/10 of everything God gave him. Jacob should be giving 1/10. No strings attached. Okay, he shouldn't be making a deal. He shouldn't be, hey, if I win the lotto, I will give you 1/10 of it. And then when you don't give it, he'll say, well, the government took it, or so I know I've read that Jacob was not, I've read this before, that Jacob was not really making a deal with God. Jacob was making a vow. So if you look at it that way, that Jacob is actually making a vow. This is what I'm going to do. We said it earlier, and I don't know, how it's translated from the Hebrew to the English, but we read in our Bible, he does say if, okay? Abraham and Isaac accepted God's blessing without conditions attached, because these are the same things that Isaac and Abraham prayed to the Father, or what the Father's giving them, but there was nothing attached. But with Jacob, it was. Okay, so maybe that's why he had more problems than the other two put together. You know, because that's one thing you'll see. Jacob, there was a lot of problems that he would be having. Okay, let me see where we're at now in our fill-ins. Nope, we're not there yet. So after leaving Bethel, Jacob crosses the Jordan River. So before he went north, then he did walk west to east in the land, and then went north along what is known as the King's Highway. Okay, we talked about the King's Highway. We will talk about it later on when we get into Exodus, as one of the roads when the people were going up towards to cross over across on the east side of the Jordan. Okay, Jacob was in a pagan land, working his way north. Jacob knew this road would take him to Haran. Now in chapter 29, Jacob has arrived to his uncle Laban's house. When there, he runs into his uncle's daughter, Rachel, and kisses her. Immediately, every one of you, when you run into your relatives that you don't even know, never met them, don't know who they are, you run right up to them and give them a big kiss, right? No. But he does that. So that's the only thing I could think of. I could think that must have been the culture. Yeah, but everybody knows each other. Right here, he has no idea who Rachel is, and then they say that's Laban's, they tell him that that's Laban's, here comes Laban's daughter right now bringing the sheep, okay? So he runs right up to her and kisses her, I think, I don't know. But as Pastor Kathleen said, that must have been the culture of that time. That was something they did. So we should not read anything into this other than a kiss, like two relatives meeting. And maybe that's all it was, he realized.
The French people,
Uh-huh.
the men, they kiss,
Yeah,
but if they were to do it to another person from England,
yeah.
they would, don't come near me, but
Yeah.
that was the custom of France.
France, okay.
And plus it says he kissed her and wept aloud. So it's
Oh.
a real release.
So in letter C, Jacob finally arrives at his uncle Laban's home. That 600-mile trek up to Haran. He's finally there, everybody. And then Jacob then meets his uncle. It was a long journey, and Jacob has finally arrived. Most commentaries do say that it was love at first sight with Rachel, and I wonder if it, and Maria said something pretty interesting earlier. I wonder if it was love at first sight, because you had a man that was approximately 70 years old, and who knows how old Rachel was. If she was 15, I don't know if that was love at first sight. But then, but yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Felicia says for Jacob, it was love at first sight. We don't know, but we do know that she agreed. She agreed, so this may be true since Jacob was instructed to find a wife from his uncle's family. So apparently, Jacob was put to the work very soon after he arrived. Laban wanted to know what Jacob wanted in return. So here we are in chapter 29, and we find out that Laban has two daughters, Leah, the oldest, and Rachel, the younger one. It was shared with me that there's a commentary out there that says that they were actually twin sisters. And that's in the book of Jubilee. I don't know that. I didn't read that. But what we do know is Leah was the oldest. Maria, use the mic.
I just want to bring you back to chapter 29
Okay,
to the verse 5. When I read this, after reading Jubilee and Jasper, where it says, and he said to the men that came down to the well,
yeah,
he says, do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, we know him. But what if they had said, they looked at each other, because Laban is known for being deceitful and a liar. What if they looked at him and said, oh, we know him. He should have gotten his first inclination that Laban was not an honest man.
Well, that's a thought, because you're right. But he asked, is he well? Yes, he is, they replied. So,
He came running out because he remembered the first trip of Abraham. Abraham sent 10 camels loaded with gold and silver and garments. And he probably thought, oh boy.
yeah, and he was
Here he
there.
is.
Yeah, Laban was there when all this happened, so
And
he
he
probably,
finds it with
whoa,
tattered clothes, which is another thing. Here he is kissing this 15-year-old, old 77-year-old man in torn, dirty clothes. Really, I fell in love at first sight.
who says it was dirty if he took care of the Israelites wandering in the desert? No, it's good. This is good, everyone.
But he's also looking for family. I mean, he's
Yeah.
excited about, do you know him? If I said, have you seen my sister? Oh, yeah, she's right over there. I'd be excited too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a kind of a in between thing here going on. In between right there.
Okay, except for one thing, in the book of Jasper, it says the night of when he got married, that the people that were invited to the wedding, they knew that Rachel was substituted for Leah. And when they danced in front of him, singing songs, they would look at him and say, hey, Leah, hey, Leah. And he just said, he was all so drunk, he didn't know that they were saying, look, Leah, look, Leah. They were telling him they
Yeah.
knew that Laban was so crooked that
Right.
he switched the daughters.
Oh, everybody, so what you're saying then, everyone knew
First sight.
except Jacob. Yeah. And that's from the book of Jasper. So if anybody wanted to do a study, chapter 28. Okay, so we find out that Leah, we also find out here that Rachel, the younger one, that Leah had weak eyes. It may mean that she had poor vision, or as Dennis Prager's commentary says, she had soft eyes, which would be a compliment. But it didn't matter. Rachel was more beautiful and Jacob loved her, according to, and sometimes, twins, there's twins that look alike.
Esau and Jacob.
Yeah. And they were,
But I don't think she was
Yeah.
married.
you see, because I have two sisters, I have twin sisters. And if you looked at him, you wouldn't even think they're sisters. One's short, one's tall, one,
He said that they were both the same, beautiful in form.
How if they're both hairy?
No, he's talking about, now she's talking about Leah and Rachel. Heavy brows. Oh, man, you guys are crazy. I was gonna say, you guys are crazy. No, Maria and Tila. Okay, everyone. So, and they may have been twins. One comes out first, who knows? But we're not told that in the Bible, but we are told that in other commentaries, in some of the lost books. And I'll see where I can find it, because I've had a few people that have asked me for a list of all this lost books that are mentioned in the Bible. I mean, there's other books that are mentioned, but they're mentioned outside in the commentaries. But in the Bible, there are lost books mentioned.
Are they
And
lost or are they taken
There,
out?
well, we do know that early on, 2,000 years ago, there was a huge fire in Alexandria, Egypt. And oh, it was done. Yeah, it probably, you can't say the Muslims, because the Muslims didn't come around to like 600 years later. But yeah, it could very well been. But with that, with the destruction of this library that had all these scrolls of books and everything, they said there was none like it. When you read about the Library of Alexandria, there was none like it to this day. And all these books were destroyed. So they are mentioned, and in the Bible, there's some books that are mentioned, but we don't know what they say or what, and that would have been we would have ourselves a beautiful midrash.
I
if
believe the
these-
Vatican, I believe the Vatican has, I think that they have copies.
have
of all-
copies?
All of those books. I really do.
You see, but one thing about, and I believe that too, and this is just speculation or my own opinion, I believe that too. I believe that they have a lot of this, but what this is going to do is it's going to point you to a Jewish Messiah.
Yeah.
And they don't want that to happen. So I agree. I believe that they have articles or books, well, if they were rewritten before, and people had, and if it's just like the Quran. The Muslims will tell you, you have all these different Bibles, all these different versions, the NIV and you name it. We only have one. Well, what they did is they had a lot of different versions of the Quran. But then what they did is they would put to death people that had all these different ones that weren't just like it. They put it all together. Now they only have one. But like they say in the scrolls of some of these ancient writings, you can, with them microscopically or whatever, look in there and you can see there's writing underneath. So they have been changed. They have been manipulated. So what were you going to share, Maria?
I read once that Cleopatra, whenever a ship would come from different parts of the world, she would send her servants down to search out if they had any books. And
Oh,
she would either get the books or make copies,
yeah.
and she would put it in her library. She was a very, very educated woman. I think
Oh,
she spoke about 4 or 5 different languages.
uh-huh.
But that was another library that was set mysteriously on fire.
Wow.
Every time I think of her, I think of Elizabeth Taylor. I don't know why. Well, to me, I'm telling you, I think of Moses and who comes to mind? Charleston Heston, so. Okay, so Jacob tells Laban that he will work 7 years for Rachel. They bargain. And that he will work 7 years for Rachel. Laban agrees. So when the time has passed, Laban throws a wedding feast. On the wedding night, however, Laban manages to switch out Rachel with her older, I'm just going to put it there, less attractive sister, Leah. Jacob sleeps with Leah, without realizing she is not Rachel. Maybe it was too dark to see, or Jacob was too drunk and apparently had no idea he was with Leah, Rachel's older sister. One thing we don't read here is where is Rachel when this is going on? Okay. After 7 years, one would think that Jacob would know the voice of Leah and Rachel. I can have all of you go into the other room and one of you would speak and I'd know exactly who it is. Okay, and you guys would the same thing. Okay, so even Josephus, the historian, writes, Jacob was drunk with wine and it was dark. Okay, what were you going to say, Tila?
If they were twins, or, twins that he was, all they have to do is put like a veil over her and he wouldn't be able to see really her eyes.
Well, when you look at someone like that, for instance, we've got Jackie and Betsy down in our Redlands congregation. I mean, Betsy has now moved back east with her husband, but both of them, when you meet them for the very first time, they are twins, they look like each other. So something like that, I could see that, and I've seen other people, same thing, but I,
We're, they both, where's Rachel knows that he's working for her. Don't you think that she would have fought for that?
I would
mean,
think
I
so.
certainly would have, someone was, doing that. I would say, hey, no, you're not going in there. I'm going in there.
Right.
Where what happened with the two sisters, as far as, we don't have any.
Yeah.
We don't.
I would. Yeah. But wait a minute, everybody. Well, they're having a good conversation here, everybody who's zooming in about how old he is, and but when we think about Sarah was probably the most beautiful woman ever, because if you can be in your 90s, go down to Egypt and the Pharaoh, hey, boy, this is a beautiful woman. I wonder if she ever aged. I mean, I don't know, if, according to her age, when they describe it, they say that even what it's telling you is at 100, she still had the beauty of a 20-year-old. So, I mean,
Really good.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. I don't think he was blessed by God.
Okay, everybody. But it was dark. I'm going to go with it was dark and he was drunk. Okay. Okay, when Jacob realizes the next morning what has happened, he demands to know why Laban has committed this outrageous deception. Jacob would never have done that, right? Yeah, right. Okay. Laban calmly tells Jacob that their custom does not allow the younger daughter to marry the first. And that's in Genesis 29:26. So let's read that real quick. Laban replied, "It is not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one." Okay, so that is why Rachel is given to Jacob, and or Leah is given to Jacob, and not Rachel. Okay, obviously, even if this were true, it is information Laban had 7 years to pass along to Jacob. The entire arrangement was an obvious ploy on Laban's part. Here then is Jacob getting a taste of his own medicine. Okay, the lying manipulator, feeling the sting of deception and fraud. There is an old saying that says, what goes around comes around. Let's do a few more fill-ins. Okay. In letter C, Jacob finally arrives at his uncle Laban's home. In number 1, Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel. And number 2, Jacob is deceived by Laban. Now Jacob is going to work another 7 years. And then in number 4, what goes around comes around. You know what? This was a deceitful plan from the beginning. Laban is being blessed having Jacob there. He is prospering, cattle, you name it, everything. He is prospering. He does not want Jacob to leave. In fact, this is a ploy really to have him live there as long as he lives. That's Jacob's plan. Jacob's plan is to always have him there because he wants to continue to prosper. So, you know, it's not going to work out that way, but that is Laban's whole idea. He was there, as we stated earlier, he was there many years before, you know, when the servant arrived to find a wife for his father, his mother Rebecca. And the servant arrived with all these riches, you know, and you're right, Maria, when Jacob arrives, you know, it's just him and the clothing on his back. Hey, he's probably looking behind him. Yeah, where are they over the hillside, or, you know, where's the rest? Go ahead, Bernadette.
I know I'm gonna embarrass myself, you know, but.
Turn it on
It is,
all the way up. There you go.
okay, I'm just gonna ask this, because I don't know why I'm just getting this right now. He was married to Leah first, and then he got married to Rachel?
Yep, that's exactly it.
Okay.
Well, that's why earlier we were talking before Torah study. Yeah, no, but before we were talking Torah study, when he was sent to his uncle Laban's house, he was sent to find a wife, not many wives. Yeah, so he was.
Are these his nieces?
This would be distant cousins. Yeah. See, they don't only do that in Kentucky and Tennessee. Okay. Okay, everyone. Let's see. As if in generosity, Laban offers to allow Jacob to marry Rachel the next week in exchange for another 7 years of work. In spite of Laban's manipulation, Jacob agrees. And you read that in Genesis 29:27-30. Looking back on this passage, after reading about Jacob's remaining life, it turns out he has gained 4 wives, 2 who are really servants or concubines in the span of a week.
Wow.
Yeah. Both of the servants given to Laban's daughters at their weddings will wind up bearing children to Jacob as well. And that's in Genesis, if you want to write it down, Genesis 30, verses 2-3, and Genesis 30, verses 9-10. So he's got.
And he loved Rachel, right?
And he loved Rachel. He loved Rachel, had 2 children with her and 10 from the other ones. And
4 with Leah before they left, and then she had 2
then she had 2 more. Yeah.
But he loved Rachel so much, he had 6 children by other women.
Yeah.
It was a horn dog.
No, and I agree. Now, could the Lord have given all 12 leaders, or could Leah have borne all 12? Of course she could have, but we always try to jump in there and say, God, you need to do it this way. and then we do it, and then the Lord has to get us, when we fall off track, bring us back on track and say, no, this is the way it's going to be done. So we discussed that who knows, that may have been the plan all along, that Leah was going to be born all 12 of the tribes, but it didn't work out that way. Go ahead, Bernadette.
Okay, and so this is the same Leah and Rachel that we prayed for over our kids?
Yes,
Can you tell me why?
they are matriarchs. They are leaders of our faith. That's why, just like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are.
This is the same Jacob.
Yeah. Yeah, and so is Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel. And we put in or Leah, Rachel, and then Ruth. And we put in Ruth because Ruth is, well, that comes later, and she is one that stated that, when her mother-in-law, Naomi, that I will never leave you. I will, your God, and if, yep, exactly. Your God will be my God. So we pray that over our children too. But yes, answer your question.
I don't know. I hear it and I've been walking up with like my picture of my.
Well, Bernadette,
But can you tell me? actually
because they are considered the matriarchs of our faith, the matriarchs, the leaders. You have leaders, the mother. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the patriarchs are the men, and the matriarchs are the women of our faith. So you have men and women of our faith. And the men, when we say Father Abraham, you'll hear the term Father Abraham, or the God of Abraham. In fact, right here, one of the favorite names of God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yeah, yeah. So yes, the answer to your question, yes, this is the same Leah and Rachel. Okay. Unfortunately, that's why I'm saying you like to do your own study. And that's why I'm saying that I believe that maybe the Lord had another means of doing it, but it didn't happen that way. So this is how he's got to bring everything back on track. And doesn't he, Rachel is not. And I think that would have caused more controversy if Rachel was there and not Leah. Yeah. She's his wife, and remember, yeah, but no, Rachel is too, but the thing is I like what we were talking about earlier is, if he would have just married Leah, remember Rebecca sent him off to find a wife. She didn't send him off to find many wives, but that's what he did on his own. So if he would have found just a wife, it would have been Leah, and and it's unfortunate when we read that when we read that he loved Rachel more,
But God uses imperfect people.
he did, that's good. Yeah. Pastor Kathleen, that's good. Yeah, God uses imperfect people. He did that with all the patriarchs. He's doing it with the matriarchs. Moses, yeah, look at Moses, David. These are awesome men of God, and both of them murdered somebody. So, and they were still used. And like Peggy said, he does that with us. We're imperfect people, but yet the Lord is using us. Maria?
On the lines, if he had just married Leah, Reuben would not have lost his birthright.
Yeah.
Because he went up to one of his father's concubines.
That's right.
To her bed.
Yep.
So if he hadn't married so many wives, Reuben would not have lost his birthright.
Right.
They probably wouldn't have had so much family rivalry and jealousy and hatred like they had for for Joseph.
Yeah.
And
No, you're right, Maria, but I think in hindsight, I think every one of us, we can look back and say, oh my gosh, if I wouldn't have done this, or if I wouldn't have done that.
well, that's
You know.
why we're so imperfect. That's
Yeah.
why we need to start studying. And if we just study, like people say, I read the Bible in 1 year, you're not learning,
Well,
you're
no.
just reading.
Yeah, that, and that's it. It is possible to read it in 1 year because you have the 1 year Bible. But to really get in there, yeah. And yep, it's stuff like this. When you do a midrash like this and you go through the portion once a year, you can always dig in and find something else. And whoa, I didn't get that last year. Or maybe we did say that last year, but now it's sinking in,
Or else you can say, ooh, I've done that. Ooh, I did this, I did what. they did.
77.
At 77.
What should I look for?
Oh, I know. I don't, you know. I don't know. Some of this stuff, it's like, I don't even want to go there. Okay. Okay, now married twice over and with 7 more years of unpaid work ahead of him, Jacob settles in. Leah, though, is deeply wounded by the fact that Jacob loves Rachel more than her. In fact, Jacob is said to hate Leah, at least by comparison. Given the circumstances of their marriage, this is hardly a surprise. The Lord, who is always with Jacob, takes notice of Leah's heartbreak and allows her to begin having children, while her younger, better loved sister remains barren. In 29:31, it says, when the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So, and then, you know what, they give names to them, like Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, it is because the Lord has seen my misery. So a lot of these what do you call it? Abbreviations, they're all attached to these names, but did they come in before the name was given or after? I mean, because it seems like every time they have a child, then there's something added to it. Like Leah, it says Leah, let me see. Jacob's first 3 sons from his unloved wife are named as a result of her faith. Leah trusts in God, who notices her pain and for her hope or lack of it. Then Jacob will now turn his heart towards her. In spite of Leah bearing Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, however, Jacob apparently remains unloving towards Leah. And that is, I mean, to sleep with your wife and then you don't love her, give me a break. But I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking of Peggy and I don't know. Go ahead, Maria.
I think it was, the word love is misused again.
Again, yeah,
I think
okay.
it was more of a status symbol, because if you remember Hagar, when she got pregnant, she lorded over Sarah. Look at me.
Oh, yeah,
I'm the
look at
number 1 wife now.
Yeah.
So it was more of a contest, who's going to be the head honcho in the camp,
Okay,
because I have more children by my husband, which shows more of a status symbol.
yeah, that's right. Bernadette, were you gonna?
Yeah, it's kind of like, more like a personal thing, but like, okay, my husband, like, he would cheat.
Uh-huh.
And he had a particular girl that he liked to go with, and I know her. So he would go with her, but sometimes he would come home.
Yeah,
I mean, and it wasn't like in a nice way, it was more like an abusive way.
okay.
So it's
And
a different
that,
type of,
yeah.
don't wanna say it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know what you're saying, and that's probably exactly the way it was here. It was like, she was there and, you know. But Leah seemed to give up hope that bearing sons will increase Jacob's love for her. She named her fourth boy Judah, which means praise, or may God be praised. Leah's faith in God's goodness remains intact, even while her hope that her husband will love her appears to be slipping away. And I think the Lord found favor in Leah because of this faith in God, her love for the Lord, and with that, we never talk about it, but what about Rachel's love for the Lord? At this time, did Rachel love Jacob more than she loved anything else? I don't know. It's not written that way, but we could only speculate. The last verse of this chapter specifically indicates that Leah stopped conceiving children after Judah. Okay, and it says she conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, this time I will praise the Lord. So she named him Judah. Then the last verse says, then she stopped having children. Okay. So let me see if I can give you a few more. Okay. So in letter D, Leah gives birth to 6 sons and 1 daughter. We're going to cover that. The last verse of this chapter, like I said, it says she stops having children. This might be due to a temporary time of Jacob not being with Leah. However, the next chapter speaks of Rachel's anger that Leah has had children while Rachel has not. This jealousy from his favored wife might have inspired Jacob to withhold himself from Leah in an effort to give Rachel a child to call her own. But in chapter 30, in response to Rachel being barren, Rachel follows the unfortunate example of Jacob's grandmother, Sarah. In Genesis 16, 1 through 4. She gives her own servant woman to Jacob as a wife. You think she would have learned from her grandmother, but she did not. By customs of the time, any children born to a servant to Jacob as a wife, or by the customs of the time, the children born to that servant would have been considered those of the wife. If the servant has children, those children would be considered they would have been considered Rachel's children. She now follows. So she influenced Jacob to sleep with her maidservant. So she now follows Rachel's example and gives her the servant woman to Jacob as a wife, Zilpah. And it's not, they say as a wife, but it's really as a concubine. Okay. And in turn she gives birth to 2 sons. These belong to Leah by proxy. Oh no, I'm sorry, I skipped over. So Rachel names the boys for her circumstances, Bilhah. She bears Jacob 2 sons. Okay, now Leah does the same thing. She can't have any kids, so she gives her maidservant to Jacob. And Jacob also has 2 sons with her. So now there's 4 more children. Okay, so you've got the 4, and now you got 4 more. There's 8 children there from 3 different women. So none of these births, though, have ended the rivalry between Rachel and Leah. Both know that Rachel remains barren and that Leah remains unloved. Their conflict flares to the surface when Leah's son Reuben, he brings home some rare mandrake plants he has found. And the mandrakes, the plants, were thought to help in infertility, that it would help bring a child forward. When Rachel asked Leah for the plants, hoping that they will get her pregnant, Leah lashes out that Rachel has taken her husband, and now she even wants this formula to get her pregnant, okay? Rachel is apparently desperate and offers to give Leah one night sleeping with Jacob in exchange for the plants. I'm telling you, it's there. Let's see, Genesis 30, 14, 16. If you go to Genesis chapter 30, verse 14, during the wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the field and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too? And then she goes on, very well, Rachel said, he can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes plants. So when Jacob came in from the field that evening, Leah went out to meet him. You must sleep with me, she said. I have hired you with my son's. Isn't that something? Making a deal. So he slept with her that night. So, let's see, that's his wife. Yeah, she has to make a deal so the husband can sleep. Exactly. I've got people here doing this, like, oh my gosh, as the world turns, yep. Leah begins to bear children again, having another 2 boys and a girl, naming them all for God's provision in her life. Rachel too finally bears her first son, Joseph. Yay! Her name for him amounts to a prayer for another son to follow, and that'll be later on. The narrative then shifts to inform us that Jacob's 14 years of service to Laban in exchange for his 2 wives has come to an end. He demands that his father-in-law sends him away so he can return home to his own people. It's possible that Laban retained some legal right to not release Jacob. In any case, Laban says plainly that he has become wealthy because of the Lord's blessing on Jacob. He comes to understand that is why he's being blessed, not because of his faith in God, but because of Jacob's. Okay, he asked Jacob to name new wages to continue to work for him. Okay, let me give you some fill-ins. Letter D, I gave you, Leah gave birth to 6 sons and 1 daughter. Rachel acting just like Sarah. It didn't go good with Sarah. It didn't go good with Rachel. Okay. And number 2, Joseph is born and it's time to leave. How many children do they have at this time? Jacob, how many children? He's got, the answer to that is a trick question, because he has 11. He only has 11 sons because Benjamin has not been born yet. But when you say how many children does he has 12, because he has Dinah was born. Okay, he had 1 daughter. So that's okay. So Joseph is born and it's time to leave. So now in letter E, we're going to talk about Jacob's wealth made Laban jealous. Okay, so Jacob's terms were unusual. Instead of asking for a flat wage or even a percentage of Laban's flocks, Jacob asked to keep any newly born goats or lambs that are off color. See, most of the lambs are born and they'll have the one color, and but as far as being spotted, that would have been unusual, at least during that time. Jacob asked to keep any newly born goats or lambs, like I said, that were off color. Most of the sheep in Laban's flocks are white, and most of the goats are black. A small percentage of the goats are speckled, striped, or spotted, and some sheep are black. After agreeing to Jacob's deals, he probably thought Jacob is a fool. 90% of all the animals are perfect, and yet he's taking the unperfect ones. Yeah, I'll go for that. Let's do it. That's a deal. Laban immediately removes all of the off-colored animals from the flock, 3 days journey away from the main group. It looks like Jacob's deal will go bust. Yes, go ahead.
In this part, did he use witchcraft?
Nope, not at
Because
all.
he put up a stick. And he said that if the stick did something, that the sheep will come out speckled.
Yeah.
And if he put up another stick, the sheep would come out a different color. He didn't have to, if he was trusting in God, why did he put up these sticks?
Well, it's just like Moses raising his staff and then the waters parting. It wasn't witchcraft, but this, and you're right, and then throwing the stick, the branch into the water, and
Or
Gideon's fleece. Yeah, I don't think it was witchcraft. No, God was in it. Yeah.
Well,
And- Okay, go ahead. And where are you at? Where are you reading from?
Well, it's just down here at the bottom.
Oh,
of
okay.
My Bible. It says, it was God's control over the breeding process operating through the laws of heredity,
Yeah.
not Jacob's highly dubious scheme of prenatal influence that produced the increase in the color of the animal project.
And I think either Pastor Kathleen or Peggy said it. It's like God was in it.
That witch finder, the water finder, and you, and it dips down when you're looking for water, you
Yeah.
walk around and it. Is that dark?
I never understood that, but apparently it works because, yeah,
Is that God control?
I don't know. I've never studied that out. But you're right. I see these people, you read about it and,
Witchy something,
Yeah.
go around and where there's water,
yeah,
it dips.
it dips, yeah. Okay, instead, the Lord supernaturally blesses Jacob with Jacob's unconventional efforts to cause white sheep to produce black lambs and black goats to produce mixed color offspring. Well, we aren't told yet. Jacob has apparently been informed in another dream that God intended to correct Laban's cheating of Jacob. Let's read that in Genesis 31, verses 7 to 12. Okay, it says, yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if he said the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. He was being blessed, and Laban is no fool. He knew that he was being blessed because of Jacob. So even though this offering went out and he had the bulk of the sheep, well, all of a sudden it started dwindling and Jacob's started rising, but yet Laban's was decreasing. Okay, so while this chapter only mentions Jacob's use of striped poles, there is no confusion that God and not the poles caused a change in the animal's colors. Okay, in addition, Jacob breeds the flock to produce strong off-color animals for him and weak solid color animals for Laban. And later on, you'll find out that even the people that were head over the herds of animals, they even noticed that. And they questioned it basically because Jacob wealth was increasing and yet Laban's was decreasing. Okay, Jacob grows enormously wealthy. With the Lord's blessing, he has overcome Laban's scheme to keep him poor and dependent on his father-in-law. Because like I said, what we read is that Laban wanted Jacob to stay there. He wanted him to stay there forever. He did not want him to leave. But the Lord is speaking to Jacob now. Now it's time to leave. Get up, get your wife, your children, all the animals, and get out of Dodge. This isn't for you. Okay, so 20 years. He had been there 20 years. Okay, and letter E and number 1, Rachel steals her father's idols. She steals her father's idols. She hides them. Why in the world, and that's the thing about Leah. We don't read that Leah was in on this scheme. She probably could care less about those idols. They didn't mean anything to her. But at this point, the idols still meant something to Rachel. Otherwise, why would she even take them? So Rachel steals her father's idols. We talked about the patriarchs and the matriarchs in the cave of Machpelah where they're buried. And, Rachel was never intended to be buried there. It was his wife, Leah. And number 2, God warns Laban not to harm Jacob because he did want to harm him. When he sent all his people out to go follow him and track them down, which they do, his intent was to harm Jacob. And then we're going to get into the next chapter where now he's going to meet up with his brother Esau. And we'll cover that when we get there. Well, thank you, everyone. That is our Torah study for today.
Thank you.